Meeting twice a month, usually the first and third Sunday at 2 to 4 o'clock. And we have live speakers as well as speakers from Skype from all over the world to come and talk about UFOs and related things, including paranormal phenomenon too, which is a pretty amazing subject. And our website is, may I say it?
Of course.
Okay, it's dnny.info, which means Disclosure Network New York. You have to type it all out, just dnny.info. That will get you right into our website. And that has the meetings, all the meetings we have.
Wow.
What's going to happen next.
How often do you meet?
Sorry?
How often do you meet?
Well, twice a month throughout the year.
Well, excuse me, what, Richard? Are we on?
No, you have, look at the clock, you have 25, 24, 23. Can you see the clock?
Yes. Oh, I see.
There we go.
12 to 30. Have we got the recording of the DVDs?
Yes, recording, and now you have 15 seconds.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay.
God bless you.
All right, so we're getting ready to go on live.
All right.
So I take it we look at the camera with a little light on it.
Hello there.
Yes.
Thank you for tuning into What's Ailing Healing America. I'm Frank Craven.com, and I'm so excited because tonight we have George, who came in from Woodstock. Thank you, man. George Conant and Nick Curto.
Pleasure.
Now, tonight we're going to talk about, of course, What's Ailing Healing America, a question we have right and duty to ask and answer, but the most important thing is that we're part of a universal, intergalactic, spiritual reality that most people aren't aware of. But George, who's had contact many years ago, and I have had some contact, and Nick, have you had contact with
I've seen UFOs in the sky with my group, and both in Pine Bush as well as Central Park, believe it or not. Major sighting with maybe 12 people there, and we couldn't even talk because it came over and stopped right over us and stayed there for maybe 15, 20 seconds and then slowly moved till it was out of sight. And you know where Cleopatra's Needle is in Central Park?
Right behind Metropolitan Museum.
It's a granite structure, and when they said, where are we going to go? I thought, well, let's go tonight to Cleopatra's Needle. It's granite, and it looks like an aerial. It looks like a place you could make contact.
Well,
so I
of
thought,
course, that thing must be 10, 20,000 years old, or maybe 100,000. Who knows reality? They say this, that, or the other, but there's a lot of mystery about the history of this planet and our contact. As Zacharias Sitchin has come out with pictograms, and throughout the world, and all these sacred heritage sites have tremendous, and obviously if we're in eternity and a spiritual awareness that there's really no beginning, no end of time. You know, obviously this glorious planet Earth that is so pretty and biodiverse must obviously have a lot of contact going on. And George, you were telling me earlier that you have been informed that indeed we are, and I've read it in books too, that actually we're sort of under quarantine and we're monitored because this planet is scary. Mankind is bellicose and a big bully unto himself, and they don't know how to get along with himself. So, right?
Well, referencing my contact experience, I was very young. That was 1963, and I kind of was able to verify this because my older brother Ray had also been brought aboard the craft at the same time, and he freaked out. They had to put him back in the house, but I was able to withstand the contact because it was the way I asked, I said, why me and how come? And they said, well, you don't know fear yet. I'm just a little kid.
Wow. And
the shape of my mind. And I wrestled with that probably 50 years of my life, figuring out, and it was only in the last decade that I really understood what they meant by the shape of my mind. You get into the shape of my mind, or anybody's mind, is a geometry of the invisible. And if you study nonparticle physics and waveform phenomena, you understand that there is a geometry to these things, and there is a geometry to our emotions. So when like a group of 3 people like ourselves in this room, we are creating a geometry of energy, emotional energy and intellectual energy.
Right.
So
and
when you have
potentially 300,000 viewers, God knows who's watching the show and what they're going to glean from it. But what I was referencing to was the fact that we are being monitored and watched by many sister planets and extraterrestrials, and we have been for a long time.
Right.
I just want to speak to that for 1 second, because I've been on a 1-year research project with a wonderful woman who's a channeler and a healer, and she gave me an invitation to do one, and we are up to 25 channelings now. We've recorded it audio, and the book's coming out in about a month's time, and it's the most exciting thing I've ever done. And the reason I'm bringing it up is that we've gotten off-planet beings, and I get to talk through her, and then when she hears what she's hearing, she'll say it. So she's saying so I can hear what she's hearing, and then I was like an interviewer, and some of it was off the charts, incredible, spiritual and helpful. We never got dark, energy. We never got scary stuff, because who knows?
But we are in a suffering time of scariness, where they've destroyed stargates and vortexes and energy all over Iraq and Afghanistan, and we have this malevolent dictatorial thing, especially after 9/11, and that whole 9/11 tragedy is an ongoing malfeasance and weirdness that is completely foreign to our nature. We want to live in peace and harmony worldwide, yet there's this perpetual war on terror and this constant belief that we have to, when you were talking 63, go to Vietnam. What are we bombing the jungles of Vietnam for? What are we doing this, that, the other?
Insane.
It's crazy. It's insane. It's
completely... Well, it's not insane. What it is it's an agenda. And it's an agenda from a higher evolved and higher technologically evolved adversary, if you will, who control us. We human beings, we don't know our history, we don't know how wonderful we are, and that's, as a message that I would like to give to your viewers, you're amazing, you're beautiful, everybody counts. Every individual can make a difference. Do not ever buy into the idea that you're powerless, you're powerful. In fact, everything that they tell you, just go the other way, and you're probably going to be more accurate in your assessment of things. So that's the only as a real down home message from the woods of Woodstock. You're amazing, you're powerful, and you're beautiful, and love is definitely the healing glue for all peoples, all nations, all animals, all bacteria. It's the web of life. All of this is sacred, and this is something that my contact experience made very clear, is that we live in a living universe. Life is the rule, it's not the exception. And that's what, earlier we were talking when you were out of the room. Yeah. We were talking about how, isn't the Earth like this, jewel in the universe and very special? And yes, it is, but it's not the only one. And there are other Earths out there, or Earth sister planets, that are suffering even worse than we are. We are kind of coming to a place where we're very important in not only healing our own planet, but helping other planets.
Wow, so the evolution of the human species and awakening. Now, obviously, Jesus had it clear, and Buddha had it clear, and throughout history, Lao Tse, there's been great enlightened masters and people just in woods and nature, wherever throughout the world, are herbalists and connect with nature and connect with the community, and are gentle souls and enlightened beings that know they're star people. The Lakota and the native people aren't afraid of the star people. They know that they exist. So there's a genuine consciousness that's really beautiful and benign, but we have this malevolent factor too that's sort of usually in authority, that is controlling and keeping us enslaved and perpetual war and violence. So why is that? Would you attribute that to an actual extraterrestrial invasion that's dominating us and using us as subspecies?
I can answer part of that. So far, the contacts we've had have been embracing, loving, and the only thing they keep bringing up is that you are children playing with nuclear war, you're playing with nuclear, and it affects us on other realms, and they see us as silly and stupid. The word stupid was used. How could you possibly be doing that? You're on the brink of annihilation, and it's happening right now. Look at the for the last year, look at the news. It's like worse and worse and worse. I've never felt closer to nuclear destruction in my life than right now.
And you feel, and there could be a chain reaction, Yeah, with bombs and whatnot. But I've
That's
always
why
felt that
that's why
God.
we're under quarantine.
What?
That's why we're under quarantine from
Okay.
from the let's call it the Galactic Federation or community, if you will. As one of the messages that they delivered, or the advanced information that I got as a kid, what they were saying is that, look, we're a million years in advance of you technologically. All right, we can turn your planet off and not even leave our couch.
Here we go.
From home. All right, so from the other side of this sector of the universe, I mean, they were from a long way away. They made that clear to me, and that's part of my story. But anyway, the point is, there are levels of technology so far beyond what we have and what we can even comprehend or imagine that we are in a rubber room.
Right.
They're not going to let us nuclear annihilate either our planet or the universe. That's just not going
The
to happen.
universe, why? There's a chain reaction
Yeah,
that
well,
can
if you-
happen?
that's what they said to me. Now, whether it's
Us too.
verifiable,
Us too. We
what
heard
they
the
said to
same
me
thing.
was that if you detonate nuclear devices in deep space outside the magnetosphere of a planet, you will detonate creation. Everything goes. All dimensions, all realities, everything goes. And there's about 1 million species who travel in space that don't like that idea. And they broke it down into 3 groups: friendlies, neutrals — I met neutrals — and unfriendlies. And the reason that we haven't been turned off, and that's how they put it, we can just turn your planet off. I said, if it comes to it. And
Okay,
they
but
said,
the unfriendlies, if they're so advanced, and if they do enjoy violence to this point, why wouldn't they have kicked in their negative program?
because they're not the only honchos on the block.
What about God factor? I have faith in God. Now that's a very nebulous, hard to understand, but it's basically about love and the idea of continued existence, right? And community and sharing. And so that's do they, or in your experience with the extraterrestrial, do they all sign on to this God as a being, the supreme being?
In different names and in different levels, the answer is yes, because I've asked questions like that. In your Rancher book, we talk about the Universal Father. That's one of the terms I use for God. And I asked about that, and we've gotten incredible deep answers. We were blown away with the answers about how they feel about that, and that we're all connected, that not just on this planet, and not just every creature and everything, but in all planets and galaxies, and they were all together on this. They were very protective. We just got amazing protective feelings from them. Statements of, we are very concerned. Really, you wouldn't believe how concerned and upset they are about our nuclear capabilities, and the fact that we're just about warring with certainly North Korea and China. I mean, that is really scary stuff.
But remember, MAD, mutually assured destruction. The world is round. Obviously, the nuclear cloud and that nastiness is just going to repercuss. It's all connected.
Nobody wins. Nobody
it's a suicide thing.
Absolutely.
You lob a bomb there, it's going to come back and haunt you.
Absolutely. Nobody wins. That's the insanity of it.
Well,
for my 2 cents, I don't like to give them that much authority and power.
Okay.
All right, and one of my good native friends, Lloyd, would always say, just don't give them permission. And I couldn't understand. And it's a spiritual thought.
Okay.
And spiritually, as our community grows in awareness, we don't give permission. Vibrationally, we don't give permission. They're not allowed to do this. And that a lot of the media and politicians, are feeding us lies, false information.
Understatement.
But to go into our, like Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the massage, okay?
Yeah.
All right. It's not true. It's not as bad as they're saying it is. A lot of what we're being told is to keep us in a state of fear.
I see what you're saying.
All right, so to tease out what's real and what isn't real, because I'm a kind of an empirical person. I'm not going to say something with any kind of assurance unless I can measure it with my five senses.
No, of course.
So whatever the media says to me, I go, it might be or it might not be. We're on the brink of nuclear war with saber rattling with North Korea, which is laughable because those people are suffering horribly, and they've spent all of their resources on military buildup. Well, they do have Russia and China on their next door. I mean, they do have some concerns. They have mineral wealth there, like Vietnam had mineral wealth and rubber trees. So whenever you look at these dynamics, there's always sort of a profiteering involved. But beyond that, I like to think that, and I could be wrong, that it's not as bad as they're telling us. They're making it bad. They're advertising it's bad, and that's driving a consciousness.
And is this so that Halliburton and Martin Marietta, Boeing can profit, and they blow off their firecrackers, and they just have contracts, and they just love to create more missiles and bombs because they want to be multi-millionaires or billionaires?
Multi-billionaires.
Absolutely true.
Again, this becomes another...
Big business. And
very big business.
The war machine is big business. When there's no war, there's no profit for those people.
Yeah, it's a nasty outbreak of peace.
Bing. Nasty, I love that. Wow.
Yeah. That's kind of
so for us to have world peace and social justice and harmony, it's obvious in the heart of every human being that and every creature on planet Earth wants peace and love, just go about their business. And we live in a prey-predator society, and of course, the bird eats the worm, and this eats that, and everything's eating off each other. But still, in all, there's a sense of I'll just take what I need and I go about my business. Yeah. And so. What is this just a game? I'm thinking possibly, we twiddle our thumbs this way, or we twiddle our thumbs that way because we have all eternity. And as God incarnate coming back to planet Earth in the third dimension, well, let's play the game, yin and yang, negative and positive. Electromagnetics have to be the polarity, the hot and the grounding rod. So there's got to be the shadow and the light to keep existence going. Otherwise, it's all void and perfect harmony. So it can be boring. We want to have fun. We play games. We mess things up. We fool around.
Yeah.
Well, if we weren't challenged, we wouldn't grow.
Yeah.
And that's what my elders would always say, is that, we have the kind of challenges that we have as a Earth society, right? Okay, whether if we're going to go out and hunt buffalo, your warriors are going to come back pretty banged up because buffaloes are serious hunting, especially if you're doing it with a spear.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, but now to my.
I'm so sorry. That's my. I forgot to turn it.
I just had to turn mine off.
Hey, we're live. What's Salem Hill in America?
Live. We are
George
live.
Nick Curto, Frank Craven, and we're glad to see you in your living room. Hopefully, you're enjoying the show.
Someone just called in and said that the names are wrong.
The what?
The names on the screen are wrong or something like that.
Yeah. I'm Nick, and
Okay.
It's the other way.
So I'm not going to change it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's all right.
Right. This is George, and that's Nick.
Hey.
And I'm Frank. When you're craving someone, Frank. And so what are we talking about here? UFOs and all three of us have had contact to some degree or another. There's lots of stories, and we've looked into this throughout our life. And I think we've been touched not only by extraintelligence, but everyone who looks at our crop circle in Wiltshire, England, and especially now in July, June, every year there's new ones that lift our higher intelligence. And that's sort of what the extraterrestrials who are so evolved have said, hey, come on, human beings, stop being so stupid and beating up on each other. Let's get along and live in peace and harmony. Mother Earth can provide enough food for everyone. Yep. Now, billionaires like Mr. Gates and all these people that are like Bloomberg, whoever, just feel that there's the have versus the have-nots.
George Soros.
And the Agenda 21 and downsize and kill off the population control. That's sick. That's evil. And unfortunately,
Can I address that thought for a second?
What?
Well, just exactly what you're talking about. The idea that the kill the humans program. The Agenda 21.
Oh boy.
From my point of view, half of the arable Earth, half of the landmass of the Earth isn't even explored, isn't even inhabited. First of all, secondly, the only reason that we have problems environmentally is because we're making millions and billions of automobiles instead of having millions and billions of gardens in the backyard.
Whoa. There we
Okay.
go.
Yeah,
I mean,
using
this is,
electro-
so we are simply mismanaging our own behaviors.
Right.
Now, there's no reason that we can't make cities ergonomically and economically and environmentally sound, because we are also stacking. You know, it's like I live in a community of, I think, 6,000 people in the summer, maybe. All right, you have 6,000 people in one high-rise in New York.
That's right.
Okay,
Right,
So
and every high-rise could be a power plant if it was built eco-friendly and with water recycling, solar
Absolutely
panels,
true.
hanging
and all-
gardens.
Yeah, hydroponics and you know,
So you don't have
sprouting.
to ship the food all over the place. You could grow it
Locally.
where you are. In the city, even we could, with those tall buildings that could be gardens.
All
Yeah.
along the sidewalls.
And with
Okay.
spiraling, they could do hydroponics and turbines and create it like a sustainable energy plant.
Very exciting, and it's the technology is here. You know that, I know that, you know that. The technology is here. So what's stopping us?
Bad advertising.
Okay.
But no, also
Because ultimately-
the profits in the portfolio that these billionaires want to have digits, and they want to just keep thinking, don't rock the boat because I want to make more money.
Oh no, it's much worse than that. This is a control paradigm. You know, their economic flim flam, all right, that they're doing on us. They have all the wealth, they have all the money, they have all of us. They're not going to get anything more because we are already a controlled species. It's just that there's too many of us getting too smart.
See, there you
That's
go.
the problem,
I
because
think
we
that
are
you hit
wonderful,
something
we
real
are
important.
wonderful, and we are powerful,
Yeah.
and we can make contact with each other on a frequency of the mind rather than the cell phone. But we have to have the choice and the juice to clean the
Right, we
the
could take
brain,
our Saturn finger and touch our pineal gland. So I give myself permission to open up my third eye and work with our girlfriend or animals with telepathy and test ourselves with our psychic ability and just keep going as a natural way of developing our higher consciousness and telepathic abilities, which is going to happen like it or not as we evolve.
Can I talk about technology for a minute and
Sure.
the level of technology that's
Whatever,
being...
man.
all right,
George, you're smart.
we're being exposed to people. We're being exposed to very high levels of a technology, and they're not telling us. Now, the photography that, unfortunately, I didn't bring some photography with me to put on the screen here for you all to see, but you can see it on my YouTube channel if you go to it. Conant Show, show number 33. It will give you some nice pictures. So I'm sorry I don't have them tonight. But what I'm saying is I took photographs over 10 years of stuff over Connecticut and over New York, and it was because of the chemtrails. I said, okay, I'm going to take pictures of these planes up there, and I kept calling them planes, and then I got a real, an old camera, and the older cameras are good. The old analog, real 35 millimeter film with a real good zoom lens takes a different kind of a picture than a digital. Just going to tell you. So, I got images of stuff up there that are not airplanes. They don't have wings. They don't have propellers. They don't have rotors. They are like cubes with tubes sticking off of them, spewing out chemtrails silently. And they can stop. And they can go this way and that way. They're gravity drive. All right? Who's making them? I don't know. What are they? I don't know. But I got pictures of them, and they're not airplanes.
Wow.
They're not helicopters. They're not conventional of anything that we are being exposed to.
Wow, Nick, you're definitely on the board with exposing chemtrails. You've been doing that for a while, right?
It is so important that the public understands the real threats that are up in the sky, like you're pointing out. It's there. And we're going to have Jeff Brady, who has a program on WBAI 99.5 FM, and it's called Other News. And Jeff is going to give a presentation of the photographs that he's taken over Manhattan and the boroughs of what you're just saying. And some of them are far from the normal saucer shapes.
Oh yeah, they're not saucers at all.
They're other
tubes.
Oh my God!
They are tubes.
And all, amazing shapes.
Yes.
And so Jeff is going to give this. May I give the
Yeah,
date?
please let us know. Where is it happening?
By the way, if you guys are in the city, we'd love to have you there. It's going to be Friday, June 23rd from 7 to 9 o'clock. And Jeff is going to bring his photographs, his video, as well as his still photographs. And we got a big projector so we can project on the wall.
Where is this?
Sorry?
Where is it going to happen?
It's going to be on West 18th Street. If they go to the website, it's all there. The addresses and everything is there. It's $10, and it will go from 7 to 9 o'clock. And after that, we're going to go someplace to get a bite to eat and discuss.
Well, this would be wonderful, because if his photography corroborates my photography, now we have two sources.
Here you go.
Exposing the same level of technology. And this is one of the things that I've been, working on my TV show and up in Woodstock, is I'm trying to tell folks, we're being exposed to very, very high technology, and nobody's given permission for this.
That's it.
Well, maybe it has to do with HARP, the secret of whether
the 5G rollout,
whether as weapons technology,
yes,
and playing around with our atmosphere.
Absolutely.
With no permission, certainly from any citizen of any country. Most people don't realize the depth of the multi-trillion-dollar interest to do this. Every day I go outside, and just about every day I'm seeing chemtrails. Some of them are right in your face. I mean, they're there, and they cross. What planes would cross paths in the sky? No planes would do it. But the chemtrails are there, and they spread out, and eventually they look like clouds, right?
Well, they always attack cirrus clouds, and if you watch it long enough, after they spread out, the cirrus clouds come in and eat the chemtrails, and they come into they form like a fuzzy cumulus cloud. And then if you any cloud at all, folks, get a good pair of polarized sunglasses, and if you get the sun behind it so that you can get sunlight coming through the cloud, you will see a deposit coming off the cloud. And as the cloud, which is a living creature, clouds are living creatures. The air is a medium like the ocean. It's alive.
Absolutely.
And these clouds are eating the chemtrails with life force energy, orgone energy that's in your body and in your body and in my body and in the body of a cat or a dog or a blade of grass, is all life force energy. And that life force energy in the atmosphere is what's been eating the chemtrails, and that's why we're all still here talking about it, because back in 2005, that was when they really hammered New York. In the East Coast, they were wiping out Indians out west with the chemtrails, California and Oregon.
What's the result? Disease? Because disease is on the rise. Instead of demise, as we progress as a society, we should have disease on the demise, but it's on the rise, especially with the cell phones and the 5G rollout. But brain tumors and cancers is rising, especially amongst the young kids who are sleeping with these things. They're beaming off satellites. Our electromagnetic field isn't used to this kind of thing.
The Omni magazine in the 1984-86 era, right? They had an article about how planet Earth at that time was the brightest radio object in our local universe. Wow. It's like we're making more noise in space with all of our electromagnetic emanations. That's like 30 years ago already.
Oh boy.
All right. So what we're doing now, we if you want to let the universe know that we're here, we're doing it, folks. We are very bright out there.
We're not being subtle. Is that what you're saying?
We're not being subtle. No.
Yeah, we're broadcasting it all out there, and we're doing the nuclear bombs and all the testing. It's still going on. A lot of UFOs started showing up when the bombs started going off.
Yes.
The atomic bombs and the nuclear bombs, and that's when all of a sudden, what's going on in the sky? They were aware that we're doing this, and this is not good news for them. Our brothers and sisters.
Or us, or anyone. And thank God, I remember John F. Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev wrote the nuclear test ban treaty that said, hey, we don't need to test any more nuclear bombs. Yeah. That's just going too far, Gee whiz, we only have a couple of minutes left, and we're almost into the program.
This went so fast. Oh my God, did it go fast?
Yes, it did.
I appreciate you sharing, Nick Curto, and again, your
honor
with the Disclosure Project, right?
Disclosure Network, New York, here in Manhattan, and it's an amazing group, and we hope that your listeners will take a look at their website and come to some of our meetings. They're exciting meetings, and the people there are researchers and serious people wanting to get the truth.
George, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom.
Anytime. I really love being your guest, and I'm always open.
And your show is on Woodstock TV. God bless Woodstock.
Yep. Hey, yep. And hopefully we'll get back on the streaming on the internet. We're just a local access TV station with 3,000 subscribers, but we're hoping that we'll get some new equipment in our facility and get back online and stream to the world again. That was that was a big blow to us that we lost that, but we'll get it back.
Yeah, well, whatever we believe, we can see if we can make it happen. We have tremendous brain. We walked on the moon, right? We split the atom. We can do miracles. Let's make it happen. We're humans.
I'd like to see us do more practical things, like feed our community. Yeah, when I was thinking a lot about all of this stuff on the way. I took a train down. I had business in Poughkeepsie, and then I had a little business in Cold Spring. So I said, I'll park in Cold Spring. I'll take the Amtrak down. And I'm looking at all the infrastructure that has been built and is decaying. And one of the things that struck me, and I love this, I'll be quick here, is that there's all these telegraph poles, and you could still see the stuff from the 1920s where they had direct current going, the insulators, like all along, and they're still using them. They're just using those old decrepit poles, and they put new wires over the top. And I'm thinking, this is hilarious, But it just made me see that everything is impermanent, and now all these buildings that were like crumbling along as coming into Yonkers and stuff, and then just as before we came into the tubes to come into the city proper, I looked down and here's a community garden in all these buildings. There's a community garden with like collard greens growing and all kinds of beans and the nice little wheelbarrow and a compost pile and I was like, this is beautiful.
Right. Oh, Nikola Tesla had it clear over 100 years ago, and he put turbines under Niagara Falls that are still working.
We're going
and it's powering the grid in upstate New York.
We're going up to Niagara Falls next month, and that's where they have a statue of him. I saw the statue on the internet of Tesla.
Yeah, so as much as 30% of that energy is outside of Rochester, New York, off the Thruway, is a huge complex that's about a half-mile square, and it looks like a huge old wire toaster inside out.
Whoa!
And it is a heat sink. And they sink all of that extra electricity. It's not electricity. It's because they don't want to sell cheap electricity because it's so cheap, it's so free, because these things that Nikola Tesla designed and built never had to have been maintained hardly. They are built to last, and they're amazing. And in order to make nuclear energy from Indian Point profitable, they have to ditch all of this free energy from Niagara Falls.
No, free energy. Have you heard of Dave Parker?
Free energy, but
have you heard of Dave Parker? And he's on Facebook, freeenergyparty.org. Freeenergyparty.org. Now, this guy's in Austin, Texas. He's an engineer, and he's amazing. He's always posting stuff from all over the world of all this fabulous stuff that's completely renewable, sustainable, and energy free that's available. Because think about it, the planet is moving in orbit, constant motion, tidal, geothermal, water, hydro, electric, magnetic, solar, gravity, geothermal, solar, wind, tidal, but also like Volkswagen and other places are coming out with where the wheels are turning on the cars, and that's generating electricity when you harness it up, or solar panels on the roof and all this other stuff, or running on hydropower.
Nikola Tesla had an electric car in the 1920s that drew electricity from the air.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, it doesn't get wilder than what you just said.
And the banksters shut that down in a hurry.
You bet.
J.P. Morgan, he sabotaged.
Yes, but can you imagine, though, society, the entire world, if that was accepted and manufactured and made economically feasible for everybody in all the countries?
Well, then we wouldn't have war. No more war, por favor. We wouldn't be in Iraq stealing their oil or building pipelines to China.
Exactly. It's insanity when you see what could be, and then you see what is. Right?
Yes.
Boy,
so these criminals like Rex Tillerson and Mr. Trump and whoever is invested in this oil economy and fossil fuels are really not only malevolent creatures, they're destroying our planet Earth and our biodiversity and the future generations. They're real criminals. They're the terrorists. They're the public menace, and I denounce them loud and clear, and I always have, and it seems to me absurd that we should blindly accept the status quo when in fact it's completely contrary to our survival and our intelligence.
I see grassroots organizations coming up that are going to address these issues.
Well, that was a popular Bernie Sanders, the grassroots and the poor man, but the billionaire, he suddenly goes to the White House and says, give it to Hillary. You know, he seems to say, take your revolution, and all of a sudden he had to give it over to Hillary.
Oh, boy.
She was a big arms dealer.
Well, she probably had somebody with big arms tell him to, knock it off or else. And so he gave it to Hillary. I mean,
But there's more of us
more
than
of that
there
story.
are of them. And I think we have to stick together as brothers and sisters. We really have to address these issues. They're not going to go away.
No, they're
not. And we all know that. We've got to fight. We've got to stand up and fight. And we've got to do it now.
But how can we fight the man? They got a multi-billion-dollar Pentagon budget, and obviously they just run this nonsense, and I find them completely malevolent. Sociopaths.
Yeah, that's
People
true.
like Cheney and Rumsfeld are obvious, and George Bush, and Mr. Trump, whoever, even Obama. These people are completely. Drones are not diplomacy.
It's
put out a fire with water,
it's
not with gasoline and bombs.
It's the moms and the dads of the world that are the biggest threat to the war machine.
Yeah.
It's the moms and dads because they teach their children either to love or to fear or to hate or to have an ideology of one kind or another. And the way that we fight these guys, the way that is to bring truth to the table of consciousness, everybody's consciousness. And so that means we have to reach out to our cops, we have to reach out to our army guys, and from the lower ranks to the higher ranks, we got to say, look, you guys have a form and function and purpose, but it's not to be abused. If you're going to be, I deal with the public. I don't want to be a cop. I sell movie tickets, and that's weird enough. Dealing with people. People are eccentric, and they're needy, and there's a lot of diversity in people.
Police have a purpose. I'm not an anarchist. I believe that we should have law and order, but reality is that these sociopaths in power are just completely insane and criminal and a public menace, not only to the environment, but to our own survival.
And this is what the aliens that I encountered were very adamant about, is that we have to restructure our society to an egalitarian society where nobody is any better than anybody else. We all have a purpose. If we were to take the stratification of society away, where you have the very wealthy and then you have the very poor, and you just sort of remove that as an element, people like to do stuff. We just don't want to be fed. I was looking at the Hudson River coming down, seeing fish rise in it, going, damn, I wish I had my phone. I was like, well, I wanted to go fishing. If you go fishing, you're going to bring food home for your family. So what I'm saying is that we as men, all right, we as providers want to work to bring to our family. To bring and offer and share. This is our real natural condition.
I'm going to add protect.
And protect.
Yeah.
But if we live in a peaceful world, we won't really have to worry too much about protecting. Although, of course, the elements, when it rains, you got to put a roof, and you got to fix the roof, and you have to do a lot of things to protect. But the sense of survival, like people paying their homes, and suddenly they're foreclosed on, and then they're kicked out and they're homeless, or people are sick. The society is guided by money, and money is just a tool, and it should circulate. But these multimillionaires and billionaires who are hoarding it instead of sharing it, or not, have to know that it's a commodity, and money's fine. It's important to share and have access to all. But for some reason, there's this material obsession that just
that's the control paradigm. You see, I believe that human consciousness is much like a computer. It can be infected with a virus. So we have a consciousness virus that makes us do the wrong thing. And that's what I feel that we need to battle as a human community, is to slay the dragons in our own minds first, and then we can deal with others.
Well, this is what Muhammad channeled through Angel Gabriel in the Quran about the jihad. The jihad is the holy war, but it's the control of your appetites and control of your modesty, control of your mouth, of your mind. And that's why they have Ramadan. They don't eat and they pray 5 times a day. And there's a sense of discipline. And it's like What's going on? Well, no, you're not allowed to fornicate outside of marriage. You must marry a woman and give her a home and shelter throughout her life. And you don't treat a woman like cattle. Oh, you need another one? Fine, but no more than 4 wives. Okay. Now, that was radical thinking 1,000 years ago, but it actually showed respect, and it's about finding the power to control your appetites, control your mouth, control your lust and your greed, no usury. You can't, so...
well, we have educational sources from lots of cultures. Now, matriarchal societies, as opposed to that was a patriarchal society that managed it one way, and a matriarchal society in the northeast woods of North America, it was the women who had the power.
Right.
And in their political structures today, they still do. Many of the nations in the east here, and the reason why the grandmothers and clan mothers made the decisions to go to war is because it was the women who had to dress the wounds and bury their husbands. So that was a heavy-duty decision to go to war, and it was on the heads of the women to think it through for the 7 generations ahead.
Right.
What decisions are we going to make? And it was the chiefs. Their duty was to carry out the will and decision-making of the clan mothers. And that decision-making was arrived at from men, women, and children, all contributing to consensus.
Makes sense.
Wow.
It does. It makes great sense.
Well, the native people had to survive harsh nature and survive in the elements. And how do they survive thousands of years? Through some sort of intelligent community and being able to organize themselves as an intelligent being. And so therefore they deserve a lot more respect. And the papal bull, which created, from the Pope in Rome, said, oh, they're just savages. Don't worry about their, and so they allowed for genocide. And unfortunately, but you don't genocide the first people. They've been around for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. So we Americans, white folks that live here, are still on their land, and the spirits, the ancestors are here, and I think the native ways are coming back, and the spirituality and the awareness of what we're really dealing with here is starting to take shape as more and more people across America are respecting what happened in North Dakota, or the convergence of all the tribes and the powwows, and the sense of respecting the native ways is just inherent, because it has a certain reality to it that's enduring and real.
And respecting Mother Earth, respecting the land, respecting the water and the animals, and that's a huge mindset to strive for. And we've lost. Some of us have lost that. Just dig, rip up, chop down those trees. Dig that coal out. Even though we've got alternate power sources now, it goes on, and it's raping the world. And look what's going on with the weather. Look what's going on with all the resources that are getting less and less and less.
I'd like to address that a little bit, because there's some, again, when you get mainstream information, we have to be careful with it. And as a bit of a scientist myself, one of the things I'm looking at is CO2 is not bad. We actually are going in a CO2 drought because of the trees that have been over the thousands and thousands of years since the last ice age. The carbon dioxide, without it, the plants suffocate.
Yeah, okay.
So what happened was for 70 million or 100 million years, when trees were really growing and growing, there was no fungus to break them down when they died. And that's what the coal beds are. So all that carbon that was released in volcanoes and stuff when the Earth was primordial got sucked up by all those trees, and then the trees just piled on top of each other, but they didn't rot. And then more volcanism and more catastrophic kind of things, and then they get buried, and that became the coal seams, and that's what we're burning now. As a result of life and oxygen and carbon dioxide reacting, through plants and animals, that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere got lower and lower and lower, and as the lower it gets, to where it is today, 400 parts per million, maybe it was 280 parts per million 150 years ago, all right? It gets below 100 parts per million, plants start to die, oxygen don't get made, we all die.
You bet.
All right, so the burning of fossil fuels has been good for a couple of points. One, it put carbon dioxide back in the atmosphere. And the other thing it's done is it kept us from killing the whales off, because our civilization was being driven by whale oil.
That's true.
All right, so there's a blessing there, and we have to think about it, but we don't have to be polluting. I mean, we didn't even know how to use gasoline in the first 50 years. They were producing, they called it benzene. They were going for the diesel fuel or the kerosene for the day's technology, you know, because they didn't have electric lamps, they were using oil lamps. They replaced the oil from whale oil to kerosene. But they were throwing out the benzene right into rivers and streams.
Here we go.
Okay, so some of it is just foolishness. Some of it is fits and starts of technological development, and some of it is premeditated to damage our environment so that it takes out the humans. So I look at technology as both a blessing and a curse. Some of it is the weapons and the war and the you know, what I call the bad programming or the bad advertising to get us to do that. The other side of it is we can be responsible.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely have to be responsible, and fossil fuel industry is over. I'm sorry. Eco-friendly energy is the way to go for our future survival. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Your point is well taken, but that's all over now. I'm sorry. It's just not permittable anymore, even though, of course, business is going to carry on as usual, and they're not going to really...
I'm saying responsible. I'm saying responsible. I'm not defending the fossil fuel industry for doing stupid, poisonous stuff. I'm very angry about it because there's been fabulous advancements. There was in the 1970s a fellow in Connecticut who got 80, 90 miles to the gallon with a simple carburetor in his 8-cylinder Cadillac.
Right.
Wow. That's just tuning, just burning it properly, so it's not just putting garbage in the atmosphere.
If we spark the pistons with vapors instead of a gas guzzling, and then we'll get 100 miles per gallon or more. So
if you get better mileage, you're using less fuel. They don't want to use less fuel. They want to sell more fuel. So they make it ridiculous. But I'm getting off track. What I'm trying to say to you is that we have 7 billion people on the planet, and we need to transition to sensible use of our resources.
Absolutely. Renewable, sustainable resources.
Efficiency.
Man. Well, you know, as Buckminster Fuller said, we've transcended scarcity. In 1970, we actually have enough robotics and technology to actually have a leisure class society, and everyone sort of can just do their art or music or whatever they want to do and rocks their boat because no one wants to be idle. But we do have the ability to live in a technological paradise. But the authority versus majority, you know, the have versus the have-nots, the ego, you know, I'm cool because I got more money and I'm better off than you and I can eat my jumbo shrimp and you have to go eat your oatmeal. Sorry, kid. You know, this mentality of I'm better than you is the rich snobbery that unfortunately Mr. Trump and all these people who are supposedly in charge think that they can get over, and they want to keep it that way. It's a game, the have versus the have-nots, and throughout history, the pharaohs, the kings, the royal court, go fight my war, enrich my kingdom, you know.
Sure.
And it's a ridiculous situation that we, with our ego, have lost our spirituality, our connection to our higher self. And but we three guys are more or less grown up, so to speak, and know that there's a balancing act, and it's great to be in luxury and make lots of money and have fun, but not at the cost of you.
Absolutely.
I don't mind riding the high horse, but I'm not going to step over you to ride my high horse, you know. And so what we can find is a happy medium, and we have to keep visualizing that and knowing that the better world is possible, despite the fact that we're in this malevolent, selfish, material-driven world that is guided by the leaders who are totally consumed by their materialism and pseudo-power.
Well, if we just had even 3% of the world's population stop giving permission to it, we would see a big difference. If we could get that number up to 10% of the world's population to stop giving permission to these behaviors.
But wait a second. Now, when Trump was elected on Friday, January 20th, there was a handful of people that go, hey. And on the next day, January 21st, 2017, there was a worldwide women's march across this country in every capital in America, in the world.
That's right.
That was welcoming not Trump, But the idea of protesting, all those lies and BS and big bully nonsense platform that he proposed as a dictator instead of a democracy. So we demonstrated very clearly one of the hugest rallies and marches that this country's ever seen, and in fact in solidarity with the world. So the majority knows that he's a fool and he's a bully and a braggart.
He's still a puppet on a string. I kind of almost feel sorry for the guy.
Well, of course, he's no longer the big shot. He's a public servant that is getting criticized left, right, and center.
He also gets his marching orders from those invisible beings that we'll never know or can identify, because this is part of the communication that I got, is that we're not only dealing with very advanced beings like us, like flesh and blood beings, we're also dealing with extra dimensional beings of a higher order of evolution. You can call them spiritual beings. I don't know what they are, but whatever they are, they also have access to their technology.
Right.
Technology is not limited to this realm, and it's not. Technology is way old. There's nothing new. There's nothing new you can invent in this universe. There's nothing new. It's all been done over and over and over again.
Right.
What has to be done here is we have to stop the madness. What we're talking about is a kind of a mental illness.
Well, just the other day we see this Attorney General Sessions reading his testimony. He's obviously a liar. Obviously, Russia colluded with to put Trump in power. And here's this wimpy little Attorney General who's giving testimony, and instead of just saying, "Well, this is what I feel and this is what I think," he's reading his little speech, and it was so obviously ridiculous. And it was what you were saying. They got to follow their little teleprompter, the CIA scripted speeches, and we're supposed to accept that. What kind of testimony is that?
You brought up a point that I think is important, and you're talking about caring enough to march, and you're talking about the women who cared enough to show up in huge numbers, and also I'm seeing younger people starting to really understand what the issues are, and taking a stand and communicating and starting to do that, because it was a whole bunch of years when I didn't see that going on. Right?
Oh yeah, the young people are amazing. No, there's
that's the hope.
I got a real glimpse of wonderful young people out in Buffalo, New York, 20, 30 years ago at one of the first powwows I did, and these kids came in and they were so brilliant, so on the ball. They were just teenagers, and as the decades have rolled by, I've met so many more of these young kids coming up, and they're whether they're indigo kids or they're the crystal kids or whatever they're calling them, they're brilliant. And that's why I keep saying the individual matters. Don't be freaked out by what these madmen are doing, because we can change it.
I think so too.
I certainly agree with you. However, I pray and cry for the people of Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and Yemen and Libya and all over across the Mideast. Europe is being invaded by people running away from the battlefield by weapons of mass destruction made in the USA. What the hell is that? What?
One of the most amazing people I met was Revital Arieli, whose dad was Lebanese and whose mother was Israeli. Arab dad, Israeli mom, and she was a lieutenant in the Israeli army.
Okay.
And the schizophrenia that was involved with this woman, I mean, she was so collected and so wonderful, and she explained to me this kind of a dynamic that goes on.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, the Israeli thing, I mean, there are many very beautiful religious people in the Jewish community that do not agree with the Zionist political agenda.
Absolutely true.
They don't. This does not represent their spirituality at all. That's not what they're about.
Of course.
So
and to keep the Palestinian people under quarantine the way they have, and just surrounded and just completely controlled, and even every day or week marginalized even more and encroached upon is like an unfolding ridiculosity that completely scary. So what do? We know this. We know that Cheney and Rumsfeld are guilty of the 9/11 tragedy. They were in the secret bunker. We know that the Pentagon can't be attacked. We know concrete and steel doesn't burn or turn to dust in 10 seconds.
No, it does not.
So these things are obvious. But what do? I mean, we know we shouldn't spend.
Well,
we should have diplomacy instead of drones. If we want to stop the war, we give them chickens and soccer balls instead of bombs. We're just creating terrorism. I mean, well, it's pretty obvious, man. What do we do? Help!
Well, that's we're talking.
Help in a way. You're right. Help. Praying to God, to your God, to the who you believe, to asking for help. You have a direct communication with the spiritual father, whoever you feel. If you're into spirituality, asking for help for our humanity, absolutely.
Well, how do we look at each other? You know, there's another thought that I had. You know, as I was working my through, I hadn't been into Grand Central before.
Oh.
I always came down other
really?
mass transit. So I'm in the Grand Central building, which is a beautiful edifice, by the way.
Oh, yeah, and that
I almost
ceiling.
didn't come here. I almost was like, wow, where am I going? I mean, I was stunned by how the grandeur of it. But every
Thank
time
you, Jackie Onassis Kennedy, for saving it.
That's right.
Yeah, but you know, every time I come into New York, and today was no so you know, I look at you New Yorkers, and there's just everybody from the world is here, and you're so beautiful.
That's why I came to New
old
York.
people.
That's why I came to
young
New York.
people,
Yep.
People on the street, people in positions of you know, whatever.
Yeah,
just
Asians, Africans,
everybody.
Australians.
You know, what a beautiful thing we are, we humans, and that's part of the healing. You know, you talk about the healing. We can talk about the problems. The healing is how do we look at each other? Do we look at each other and say, "Wow, you're amazing. What a beautiful person." You know, what a beautiful person, and respect each other that way.
I was on a subway a while back, and it was fairly crowded. I was sitting here, and an elderly gentleman with a white beard, a black man, was sitting way over there, and somehow our eyes met. They just did, and he looked at me for a while, and he went like that. And I did the same thing. I acknowledged him. And it was just that moment of brotherhood, that there was something there. I mean, it blew me away. It made my whole weekend, because there was an acknowledgement there that he felt and I immediately sensed and felt. And I think a lot of people are just what you're saying. They help each other. They want peace. They want their children to have a good life. They really. I'm talking worldwide. It's not almost everyone. It's the leaders who are puppets to the money people, the people who want war, the war machine to make billions of dollars when we could use it for so many other things.
Can you say maybe, George, you think these people aren't even beyond their control? Like these authority that are sociopaths might even be guided by a malevolent extraterrestrial force?
Well, you're getting into a real interesting study. You know, the royal families and the Illuminati and the controllers or the designers of civilization and culture. You know, that's what you're starting to talk about there. And what are their allegiances? What's their spirituality? Maybe it's the antithesis of what we're talking about, if you get what I mean.
Well, that's come out pretty clearly in the Bohemian Grove.
That's where I
the Freemasons, they have these satanic rituals and blood rituals that have been written about and talked about that seem to be so scary and ridiculous. But if a person's actually gets involved with that, that's where the mind goes, that's what grows.
When my father told me, he was a colonel in the U.S. Army, he told me, one of the things he said to me that was really quite alarming to me, but it was very educational. He said, as every battlefield death of a soldier in uniform is a blood payment for the technology that the war gods give us.
Wow.
That's coming from a colonel in the U.S. Army who's passed away, my father. Every battlefield death of a man in uniform or woman is human sacrifice to pay in blood for the technology that we are being given by the war gods, the gods of war.
Yeah, I'm reminded of Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now, and this really evil sense of, bloodthirsty, weirdness that the battlefields throughout history how awful is a battle. War is crazy. War is hell. It's a breakdown of all moral consciousness, and it's just, kill, and it's sick.
I was going to be drafted, and it was 1966, 60, in that era, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be trained to kill. That's what's going to happen. And then I got the call to come in and take your physical, and I thought, you know what? I got to do something. I just don't. I'll help my country, but I can't kill a person. I can't. So I thought, conscientious objector. I read up on that. I went before a board of people. They said, what do you mean you want to be a conscientious objector? I said, I'll do other things, but I'm not going to learn to kill. I won't. And they finally said, well, take your physical. I passed it. And then you had to sign a paper that said different things about your health and your mental. And it said, have you ever had any homosexual tendencies? That was the word they used. I thought, yeah, okay, I checked it. And because I'm a gay activist also, that's what I do in New York. Mm-hmm. So then I got a call. You kind of come into the office, and they said, well, you passed your physical, but you checked the box that said that. I said, yeah, I'm okay with that. I don't think it's any big deal. That's who I am, no problem. And they said, well, we hear you, but we have a problem with the way the law is, so you're exempt, you can go home now. Huh. And I thought I was going to sublease my apartment in New York. I was going to spend 4 years of my life, serving without being. And all of a sudden,
you made it through 4 years, you might have come home with a box.
What do they call that? In a non-combat capacity.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I almost couldn't believe what I heard. He said, no. I said, well, when am I going to be called back? He said, you're not. And it was just unbelievable to me. Because I wasn't going for that. I was just simply saying I don't want to kill people, but I'll serve my country in other capacities.
Oh my God! A gay man can't pull a trigger.
Yeah, but I mean, think of that. It was like such a weird.
Well, that was a different time. Now they accept gays in the military, don't they?
Yeah, of course. But I mean,
still,
the
military as a construct is Department of Defense, not offense. If we're attacked, okay, defend our country.
Speaking
but
of
what are we
departments,
doing in Yemen and Syria, Libya, Afghanistan, Iraq? What the hell are we? We have no business there.
Was it Kucinich who was saying we need a Department of Peace?
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, we have a Department
there you go,
of War.
folks. Let's demand the Department of Peace.
Absolutely. Why do we have that? How
well,
important
Dennis
is that?
Kucinich
Because it's not profitable.
Philip,
I don't know.
You're right. Unfortunately, you're right. That's what their thinking is, right?
That's what the
Dennis
thinking is.
Kucinich filibustered the floor for 7 or 8 hours to impeach Cheney. Article 333. I was right along with that, helping, applauding, and monitoring, and helping, and saying, yeah, get rid of this dude. No. He got ignored. In fact, he got iced out of his own congressional district. He was too noisy. Like Paul Wellstone, too, another senator against the war and all that. His plane went down. It seems that, you can't allow to speak up.
John Kennedy Jr.'s plane went down.
Yep.
He was working on something.
Meanwhile, he wanted to throw his hat in the ring and be a senator, but Hillary wanted to be senator, and so,
He's part of
Jr. would have been a shoo-in.
He's part of the Clinton body count, I see.
Right.
Yeah.
No, obviously, there's a malfeasance. I was given by Ted Gunderson, who was head of FBI security. He gave me his forensics report. Not his, a in-house report about the murder of Vince Foster, who supposedly was Hillary's law firm partner in the Rose Law Firm, Mena, Arkansas, when they were laundering money and the cocaine was coming in. Mm-hmm. Now, he was carried. There was no mud on his shoes and everything. He was supposed to testify to Congress. He was her partner in the Rose Law Firm.
Yep.
And suddenly, the day before he testifies to Congress, he's committed suicide. Oh, the pressure was too much. Too bad. Oh, well, sorry. Next. But no, he was carried into the park and he was shot from behind and all this other stuff that's obvious. The guy was murdered because he probably said, I'm not taking the heat alone, Hill. Sorry, sweetie. What do you think I'm going to tell her? And anyway, she was the brains behind that got the Black Lives Matter movement going, because while Mr. Clinton was a cokehead, a sex fiend, she was the law firm, she was the lawyer. And so why do we have penal code slavery? And why do we have this kind of, like in the 90s, psychotropic drugs became legal or advertised on TV, and privatized prisons and all that stuff.
Oh boy!
That have generated a terrible situation that we are suffering today, where we have more people in jail than any other country in the world, and they're doing slave labor.
That's exactly right.
And it's also like this war on drugs. Most of them are black. You get a little herb or so what, a natural healing plant. Oh, okay. No, if you're black, you're in Rikers Island. You know, the search and seizure. You know, they stop you and they frisk you, and it's evil. It's just another way of getting, you know, the blacks. Because otherwise, if they proliferate, maybe we'll have more blacks than whites in this country. And the white folks don't want that, do they? And so it's another